The moon does not rotate, so we will never see the details on its far side from Earth. Yet it behaves strangely. During its journey around Earth, it always faces Earth with this one side. It's as if someone programmed it. And why are these images so strangely spliced together? They show us high-quality details of solar prominences, but there are no high-quality images of the much closer moon. If the Earth is shaped like a biblical mountain and sits in a square pool with an impenetrable dome called the firmament, if space is not a vacuum but consists of an infinite amount of water, and if planets are not solid bodies but plasma energy lights, where do rockets fly? What is the whole space program for? Have you ever noticed that during launch, rockets don't fly straight up, but turn to a horizontal position? Why such a maneuver when the shortest route is straight up? Space Shuttle launch Atlantis, Florida. Soyuz VS-18. All the world's space powers are demonstrating this.
We only can fly in Earth orbit. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit.
What?
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit.
It is clear to see that the rocket is breaking apart, and only the so-called landing module is continuing towards Earth. This event is recorded on camera and used when the astronauts officially return from space, where they have never been.
Coming from where it's supposed to be, and it'll slowly kind of disappear as the rocket turns. But I will show you that shortly and why I call that a projection issue. Now, we continue watching Tim Peake and his colleagues and fellow astronauts, Liza Lott and Loda Bull. And they continue on their little flight there. Now, right there, if you looked real carefully, you would have seen the white tip fly out. We're going to watch this in slow motion again because it is some horseshit. Again, if you just look at this part here, if that is flying up and out to space, why is it that the items that are falling when they're jettisoned are actually keeping up with the height of it. It's because by this time, the item is going down. Here we are in slow motion. You'll see the white tip has already popped out, and then we got a disappearing act followed by this thing speeding up and doing who knows what before these 4 things are jettisoned. It is some unadulterated deception, a crazy lie, and yet people believe it. You'll see there, you can still see the tip way down below everything else because everything is falling into the ocean. Indeed. Watch this again. So you got your white piece already down below. It's already been separated. The tip where the astronauts are, we got the disappearing act, then it flies forward, then you get the jettison. And what do you know? Deception wrapped up in a pretty little bow. Here we're going to watch it just one more time so you can see right here as we pause it at the disappearing act. Where did everything go? I don't know. Guess they went to orbit or space or something. You know how that goes. And then it comes back. And again, how do you spell deception? N-A.
We've been seeing these images since the first human flight to the moon. Do you think all these people believe what they see and what they do? Maybe. But maybe they're liars. The first manned moon landing is probably the first CGI work, or other optical illusions. Why is the astronaut transparent? I've always been fascinated by the lander, which looks more like a pile of crumpled foil and a mixture of fabrics, yet can withstand the harsh conditions of space. And the astronauts' equipment is strange. We can clearly see that the module landed on the illuminated side of the moon. This means that the area is lit by the sun. During the lunar day, on the illuminated side of the moon, the temperature reaches up to 130 degrees Celsius. That is 266 degrees Fahrenheit. In other words, more than the boiling point. Conversely, during the period when the moon is not illuminated by the sun, the temperature hovers around minus 170 degrees Celsius, or minus 374 degrees Fahrenheit. In permanently shaded craters at the poles, the temperature drops to minus 248 degrees Celsius, or minus 414 degrees Fahrenheit. This is how science explains it to us. And this is what a spacesuit from that era looked like. However, even today, things are not much better. The equipment that is supposed to protect astronauts from such extreme temperatures, the risk of radiation exposure, and ultimately, the vacuum environment, works with zippers and buckles.
Water is also very dangerous on the space station because we have a lot of electricity, so we need to be very careful not to spill it.
That is amazing. So I'm curious, because because I know you have kids at home. How do you stay close to your kids? Oh, wow.
So water is also very dangerous on the space station because we have a lot of electricity. So we need to be very careful.
I'm just putting some hot water, squirting it onto my scalp. And I have a mirror here so I can kind of watch what I'm doing. Sometimes the water gets away from you. And you try and catch as much as you can.
And interestingly, National Geographic was one of the prime media to present photographs of astronauts cavorting on the moon. So to summarize, what American citizens are confronted with is this enormous propaganda machine. For example, the U.S. Air Force has the largest movie studios and more equipment in San Bernardino than any studio in Hollywood.
Hier achter deze panelen.
Falling objects on the ISS.
En En
So this has been something that's been nagging away at me for quite a few weeks now. One of my more recent little obsessions, if you will. Because it's prompted me to start to wonder if in any of the footage of the so-called real spacewalks, or EVAs, extravehicular activities, in any of the space programs, because I've been wondering if I could actually find a singular piece of footage which undeniably shows the astronaut going from inside the craft or space station, being in the artificial atmosphere inside the cabin, to putting on his spacesuit and having the airlock open and then floating out to the exterior. You would think that this would be a simple enough piece of footage to find. After all, 2015 marked the 50th anniversary of the first EVAs in history. That's 50 years of spacewalks now. And you'd think that there should be copious amounts of footage from handheld cameras or other cameras showing uncut, unedited, continuous shots of any astronaut going from within the cabin outside into space. So this is what I've been looking for, scouring as much footage from the early Gemini and Russian EVA missions to Apollo to the space shuttle and then on to the Mir and International Space Station missions. And sure enough, I can't say that as of yet I found anything which represents this kind of unedited, continuous shot. We can find lots of footage taken from outside, showing the astronauts supposedly exiting the hatch. And we can find footage of the astronauts prepping and putting on their suits in what is clearly an air-filled environment. But the question of trying to find something which shows them undeniably going from the interior pressurized cabin out into the vacuum of space, for the life of me I cannot find this. And again, when we consider how many Hollywood movies incorporate scenes involving the airlock, because just how much danger is involved, and not to mention how much just personal excitement would be experienced on the part of the astronaut getting their first look at space from outside the vehicle. It's really hard to comprehend that no one ever considered capturing such a piece of footage. If I were to come across footage that seemed to undeniably show this, it'd be really hard to explain it away. it would be a really difficult thing to fake. And that's the whole point. Because if you are familiar with all the kinds of critical observation that has been done on things like the ISS or so many of these other space missions involving space bubbles and harnesses and all these very peculiar anomalies, it makes a lot of sense. Because obviously the ways that they are having to try and fake the interior shots of the ISS or any other spacecraft or space station with simulated zero gravity would be quite different from the ways that they fake the outside shots using blackout pools and things like this. So going seamlessly from an interior shot in an air-filled cabin to a pool filled with water obviously would pose a whole host of problems. So one thing I found that was very interesting was this sequence showing an episode which I believe occurred on the Russian Mir space station. And apparently this was a very harrowing ordeal because there was a malfunction with the airlock. And the astronauts came back in from an EVA and were unable to secure the door all the way and repressurize the cabin. So they were starting to run out of air, and it was a bit of a panic mode trying to get that figured out. And then eventually they came inside a further interior door and were able to lock it down. But the funny thing is that this whole sequence is basically just a dramatic reenactment. We don't actually see the real footage of this event, and you can tell pretty easily that it's a reenactment because of all the camera shots that are focusing directly in on their helmets, and even in the reenactment they're showing that the people inside the space station and people down at mission control have cameras inside the airlock who can see, who are watching what the astronauts are doing. So you would think that the real live footage would be perfectly available from all kinds of angles and would make for a much more realistic portrayal of this event. So the question is, why would they reenact the whole thing if instead of just showing the real footage? So by itself, I suppose this whole question might not be a definitive proof all by itself that they are indeed faking these spacewalks and space stations and everything, but I find it to be another very interesting example of these kinds of proofs by way of omission. Just like we never see astronauts pulling 360s out in space with a handheld camera, or the same thing on the moon. They never do a 360 and do a panoramic shot.
look at the supposed 2 images provided from NASA of Jupiter. Here's the problem again. 2016, 2014. What's the difference here? Well, the difference is they added the supposed auroras on the north. And this is nothing but a Christmas tree. Give me a break. Take a look here. I mean, all the clouds are in the same exact position. Just the 2016 image is a bit, I would say, darker. This is a bit lighter in 2014. Here's a side-by-side. I mean, people can't see what's taking place here with NASA. Nothing more than fakery. I mean, give me a break. This is a complete insult if you have a brain in your head.
Draco! Draco, you rascal, where are you?
So that was a little preview of what NASA is showing us. What about Mars? Mars is actually exactly the same as the Moon. The images from Mars come from Earth. They are only edited. Everything you see in NASA images can be seen on Google Earth if you are patient and zoom in on Earth to a virtual height of several hundred meters. However, you need to install Google Earth because you won't find anything on the online version. The online version also doesn't have a timeline, which is very important for finding anything at all. Is there water on Mars? Not on Mars, but on Earth, yes.
So I keep digging a little bit deeper, and I finally get underneath this cloud cover here, and a few images pop up. And I say, oh, images, what are they? Well, this is what you got, which I'm sure that looks familiar to you, right? Looks just like the pictures they give us of Mars. So I'm just kind of creeping around here and definitely noticing the same kind of undulation changes and same kind of rock, same kind of dirt. Only thing that's missing is that nice little red tint that they pay somebody $150,000 a year to put on there. Is that right? Whose orange Hummer is this? Okay, that looks like a NASA symbol. Well, let's dig a little further because I can't really see anything on here other than it certainly looks like a NASA symbol. And I can't read that. Tried. Cameras set up, tents, ATVs, food. I've been there a while. It's not a one-day trip. Got their antennas set up out in the middle of nowhere in Greenland. Another ATV. A leveler equipment. So I'll keep kind of going through here and see if it... What the... Yeah. So. I think I found out where Mars is, guys. It's just about 1,000 miles north of me. Not quite the distance that NASA says. But I can't find anybody who's in charge of this. They must be hiding behind these rocks. Oh no, there they are out in front of everybody. Just standing there. Lovely. Clown number 1, clown number 2, and clown number 3. This thing's just driving around taking pictures. Unbelievable. Actually, if you ask me, it's quite believable. But what do you think? Are they sending scientists up on ATVs to practice on the rover in a remote island in Greenland? I doubt that, highly.
Where do they actually fly to if stars are not solid bodies and the moon is a luminous chimera moving in our atmosphere? There is one possibility, but it is very fantastical. Are you familiar with the works of Jules Verne? Jules Verne was a great visionary, and now you're probably wondering what I mean by that. Journey to the center of the Earth. Now you're probably thinking, what on earth is he talking about? But let's give free rein to our imagination, since it's Christmas after all. A journey to the center of the Earth would probably be very dangerous and financially costly. If such a flight took place, it was probably the only one. According to NASA, there are no more flights to the moon because the technology has been destroyed. How is that possible? A few years ago, I found a scientific article on the internet that dealt with the Earth's core. The general idea is that the Earth's core is a hot iron ball, but according to the scientists in this article, it is a cold and flexible body. What does this remind you of? Yes, the same is said about the moon above our heads, and we are back to square one. A woman with the moon beneath her feet and the sun above her head, our Earth. And also the NASA logo, the symbol of an eagle and the Earth. Look at the eagle. It is flying toward the moon with Earth in the background. In reality, Earth is somewhere else entirely. The eagle is holding a twig in its talons, symbolizing the energy of life. A new beginning, but that does not belong on the moon in the so-called universe. In the Bible, the eagle is represented by a dove holding a twig in its beak and announcing the new earth to Noah. Today it is a symbol of peace and prosperity on earth. The dove and the eagle have nothing to do with the moon above our heads. Unfortunately, I have no proof of the existence of an article concerning a cold and flexible Earth's core. As quickly as this information appeared, it disappeared. However, at the beginning of 2022, information emerged that, according to scientists, the Earth's core is cooling very rapidly. Really? Is this really what the Earth's interior looks like? This Sumerian tablet also depicts Earth as a biblical mountain full of flowers and a labyrinth, which we saw in Voynich's manuscript. The winged creature at the top represents our sun. It closely resembles the Indian lingam. The woman with the moon under her feet is identical to the Earth with its core. She stands on a square pedestal, a square pool. Perhaps I'm now playing into the hands of supporters of the hollow earth theory. But if that were true, there would have to be an entrance to the Earth's interior somewhere on Earth. But where? Could it be an area south of the Antarctic Circle? Science claims that Antarctica is a continent. But the distorted and obscured image on Google Earth suggests that it is more likely to be a frozen archipelago. However, during Operation High Jump, Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd saw something completely different. Beyond the Earth's frozen belt, a green landscape appeared. In recent years, strange creatures have been caught in the sea that we thought had long since become extinct. Jules Verne describes a prehistoric world in his novel. This fish is called Coelacanth and was discovered after 70 million years. It seems that it has not evolved in any way during that long period of time. This photograph was taken by Holger Hildebrand, a photographer in the German army, in 1943. Hildebrand was captured by the Soviet army near Stalingrad and sent on a so-called death march to Siberia. During this long and arduous journey, he made a short film in an area near Yakutsk, in which he managed to film a mammoth. Yakutsk is known as the land of eternal frost. But where did the mammoth come from? Do these giants still live somewhere today? Let's take a look at one clue as to where some astronauts might fly: to a very famous and much discussed statue. Yes, it is the cathedral in Salamanca, Spain. The Gothic cathedral, built between 1513 and 1733, underwent restoration work in 1992, when some more modern elements were added to the facade. And here we have the incriminated statue of an astronaut. Unfortunately, today he is missing his right hand and has facial damage. What is strange, however, is that the astronaut is weaving his way through some plants, in which we can also see strange creatures. All these strange creatures intertwine among the leaves of plants. I am sure these are the plants we saw in Voynich's manuscript. Look at the details of the strange creatures that appear here. They are the same plants or flowers that make up the biblical mountain, our earth. These flowers are probably located very deep beneath our feet. They may not have a physical form, but rather an energetic one, and they most likely produce what are known as light orbs. These orbs then come into our world from the depths of the earth. The hollow earth theory is also supported by diagrams from Voynich's manuscript, which resemble strange mazes. Our Earth is a real temple. We are all flower children. But I don't want to go into depth here, because the origin of man will be the subject of another series. Let us recall a little more from Nostradamus' prophecy. Many considered Nostradamus to be an eccentric, but many of his prophecies seem to have come true. The problem with interpreting them, however, is that the prophecies are written in the form of riddles. In connection with the year 2025, interpretations of Nostradamus' quatrains mentioning Mars have appeared. However, most researchers agree that Nostradamus understood Mars to mean the god of war or the planet, as an astrological symbol, not a physical place for life. But Mars is our Earth after all.
The light of Mars will fade.
Can you see any light on Mars? Is it possible that there is a connection with the biblical 3 days of darkness, which may refer to a global power outage? Similarly, Nostradamus mentions flowers on Mars, but where are the flowers on Mars? Flowers are part of our Earth alone, and these flowers are the origin of life on Earth. It sounds very fantastic, but we will explain everything in detail in the next few videos. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful Christmas. Lots of love, health, and spiritual peace.